Well, you're stuck with me now and all of my crazy. It's really been a tremendous year. I certainly didn't anticipate that I would find myself calling the city of Los Angeles home, and certainly found myself in the arms of your pastor, who I really have a major crush on. And maybe after service we could get together and, I don't know, do something. You know what I'm talking about? I'm so excited to share with you all today. I'm going to be speaking from Philippians 1 and 19. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the trimesters of destiny, if you will. I'm not sure how many mothers we have in the room, but the crazy thing about pregnancy is that the baby inside of you affects parts of your body that you just would not anticipate. If you ever read the book What to Expect When You're Expecting, they're like, if your nose is running and you have a sore throat, you must be pregnant. Like, kids just take over your whole body. And maybe we'll have to share that for another sermon, but the reality is that when you're birthing something, when you are producing something, something is on the inside of you, that it takes all of you to bring it to life. Literally, parts of you that you never thought would be up for debate or up for auction is now available at the cost of your destiny. And so I'm going to be speaking from Philippians 1 and 19 about Paul, who we find in the middle of producing his own destiny. In the scripture it says, "For I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but with all boldness as always. So now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live on in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. Yet what I shall choose, I cannot tell." I want to talk about what keeps us from birthing destiny. I want to talk about destiny being aborted, destiny being miscarried, and the cost of actually delivering destiny. So when we find Paul in the scripture, he's living a much more devout life than in previous years. Because before he became Paul, he was first Saul. And Saul was a Pharisee, a very strict Jew who did not believe that Christ was the Messiah. His sole mission was to persecute those who believed that. And so he made a lifestyle out of persecuting the beliefs of others, never realizing that perhaps the attraction he had to the belief in the very first place was a clue that destiny would exist inside of him. Destiny aborted. I believe that there are two types of destiny. There's one that is easily accessible and acceptable to you, and one that requires you to grow. So when we find Paul in the scripture, he's already had this battle, if you will, with who he used to be. Paul, once named Saul, had an encounter with Christ on the road to Damascus. And when he left that encounter, he found himself blinded. Interesting enough, you would think that if you have an encounter with Christ, that it would leave you with your eyes open. That there would be this illumination because you've seen Christ. Maybe the world would make a lot more sense after that, yet somehow he found himself blinded. Have you ever had an encounter with Christ that left you blinded? When you had just no idea what the world was anymore? You see, because Saul lived in the comfort of a world that he had created. And when he had an encounter with Christ, that world no longer made sense to him anymore. I think that we have all found ourselves blinded by an encounter with Christ. What is the point then in this blindness? Perhaps, if you will, it is an opportunity to no longer look outside of ourselves, but to dare to examine ourselves. What if your destiny cannot be produced because of the Saul that exists inside of you? What made Saul a threat was that he threatened the beliefs of others. Have you ever found yourself being a hater? Just like for no reason? Have you ever had to like really check yourself because someone told you about their dream or told you about their new boo, who they are so in love with, who is everything they ever imagined, and just because you haven't found your boo yet, you had to throw a little salt in the game? Well, girl, keep dating them because everybody tries to put on their first good face, but if you give him some time, I'm sure he ain't gonna be nothing. No, y'all don't do that, I know. But okay, if you just know that person, text them and tell them, stop being a hater. Sometimes our own experience make us assassins of other people's beliefs. Because our dreams didn't come to fruition, because we didn't have the relationship that worked out, because we're now divorced, because we're now evicted, we can no longer celebrate other people finding the light. And so our mission then becomes to abort the destiny of other people. We call ourselves just making sure that they know the reality of things. Yeah, I'm going to just keep it real with you real quick. It probably ain't going to work out for you. Because you have to like go a little bit hood when they get a little too hopeful. Just remind them the hood still exists. Yeah, so we find Paul. In this scripture, he's converted at this point. But before, he was dragging men and women out of their homes to throw them in front of the court. Said, look at them. They have the faith to believe. It's a dangerous thing when we become in alliance with people who are only connected to us because of what we don't believe. Faith is not what's holding you together. Misery loves company. We've bonded over the fact that life didn't work out for us. And therefore, all that we can produce is more misery and more people who look like us. Some of us have found ourselves in prisons that we created, in chains that we put on our own wrist, because the last time we tried to believe, it just didn't work out for us. What if you have aborted your own destiny because you failed to believe in yourself? What if you have aborted someone else's destiny because yours didn't work out? Because we're all in the process of development. Sometimes it's painful to see someone else succeed when we feel like we put in just as much work and just as much effort as they did. And so now I'm stuck with the option of celebrating you or tearing you down just a little bit. And it's not mean and nasty. No, they're not dragging you out of your house and persecuting you for your disbelief. They're leaving you comments like, stay humble now. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget about us little people. Oh, you changed your number now? Oh, you need hours to reply to text messages now because you got a job. As if you should remain in the same place they left you. That's the difficulty. Literally, the term abort means to bring to a premature end because of a problem or fault. How many times have you identified a problem in your plan, and instead of daring to seek the solution, you aborted the mission altogether? Because it hasn't turned out the way I thought it would, or I think that there's an area here where I could fail, I'm just not going to try at all. And then we live in the confines of what we think is accessible to us because we don't want to tap into the strength of Christ that is available to us. But that was no longer Paul's problem because he had dared to look inside himself. The issue that Paul was facing was that his destiny was being miscarried. I wonder how many of us have handed our destiny over to people who didn't know how to handle it. We didn't want to fully vet the situation or do any research, or we didn't want to have a backup plan, and so we placed our dream into the hands of an agent or a parent or a situation, and it didn't work out at all. And so instead of picking up the pieces and trying again, we are left mourning what should have been. Destiny miscarried. Did you know that 75% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage? Seems like an astronomical number considering how many people are in the world. But the reality is that some of these pregnancies never came to fruition because their cycles never ended. That means that some pregnancies ended in miscarriage and the woman never even knew she was pregnant. I wonder how many thoughts, ideas, plans, and purposes you had. But because you weren't willing to break your cycle, they were never fully developed. Because you thought you were going to make destiny fit inside your comfort zone. And when it didn't fit inside your comfort zone, you didn't step outside of it. You just let destiny be miscarried. 75%. I'm going to be transparent and talk about one of my own dreams that was miscarried, perhaps for the better. Do not laugh or judge. Before Nicki Minaj or Iggy Azalea, babe, I just said don't laugh or judge. I thought my voice is high enough that I could be a female rapper. I could change the game with 16 bars and a hot producer. But what had happened was, I didn't necessarily pursue it in the way that I should have. And then I looked up and Nicki was on the radio. All up in my spot. I wonder how many times you had an idea, a thought, a plan, one that was valuable, one that could change the world. But because you weren't willing to pursue it with the level of focus and discipline and aggression necessary, you watched someone else fill the shoes that you were created to be in. Same, better, you more talented, but less disciplined. More passionate, but less aggressive. Sure, we have the potential to birth anything, but it takes a certain type of person to actually follow through with delivering. You see, destiny has a life of its own, and the most critical part of developing destiny is in the process of when it's inside of you. When you first get the notion or the idea that you've been called to do something, how you handle it from that point forward makes all the difference. Much like with pregnancy, the most critical, according to a doctor in Britain, his name is David Barker, the most critical parts of a person's life happens in the mother's womb, those 9 months in a mother's womb. For instance, if a child is in its mother's womb and it is malnutrition, when it comes out, they say that it's more inclined to be overweight because something that happened while it was in the womb taught it that when it comes out, it's going to have to overeat, or it's going to be more inclined to have diabetes because it wasn't nourished properly. So I have to ask you on this Mother's Day, what are you nourishing your destiny with? Are you nourishing it with the fears and doubts and the stress of not knowing whether or not you're going to make it? Or have you found yourself in a situation like Paul, where he is chained in a prison, where it seems like there is absolutely no hope, yet and still he's expecting that things are going to work out for his good? If you would, please put the text back on the screen. I want to show my friend something. It says, "For I know that this will turn out for my deliverance through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ." Let's look at that for a moment. This will turn out for my deliverance. I'm going to be able to deliver whatever it is God has placed inside of me, but I'm going to need 2 things. I'm going to need your prayer, and I'm going to need a supply of the Spirit of Christ. A supply, a storage, an overflow, if you will, of the Spirit of Christ. The only way that I'm going to survive this is if I can tap in not into my doubts, not into my fears and insecurities, but if I can tap into the one who says that all things are possible through him. He goes on to tell us in verse 20 that according to my earnest expectation and hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed. And that is where things get a little bit fuzzy for us, because we're so afraid of being ashamed of our process that we don't think we can survive delivery. What if your deliverance requires that you first have to be evicted from your apartment? What if your deliverance means that they're going to be looking for your car? Listen, Sarah used to have to hide her car in other people's garages because they can't come get it if they can't see it. I'm not giving you tips on breaking the laws. I'm just giving you my testimony. What you do with it is neither here nor there. But in the process of destiny, you may find yourself in a situation that could look hopeless from the outside looking in. So how then do we look from the inside looking out? So the question then becomes, what is on the inside of you? It takes more than the desire to make your dream a reality. It takes more than the desire to go out and get it and hustle and I'll do whatever it takes. What if it requires a supply of Jesus Christ that you have not yet tapped into? What if that supply starts running low in the middle of the process? Beautiful part about pregnancy is you find out you're pregnant, you're all excited. Some of the times, depending on the situation, you learn to be excited. Everyone has a different testimony. Then about halfway through the pregnancy, when you're carrying around literally a human inside of you that will not be still and moves all the time and messes with your ability to wear some of your finest clothes. Pregnancy can lose its glamour just a bit. Then even further on into the pregnancy, when you perhaps look like a whale. I don't know. I've been pregnant before, so I'm just saying that was my experience. That it's not as cute anymore when you're lugging around the heaviness of birthing something. Yeah, I was all excited when I thought I was going to get the Oscar immediately. But when I realized I was going to be turned down from audition to audition to audition, it doesn't seem as glamorous. I was all excited when I got the job, but when I met my boss, I didn't realize that it was going to require me to tap into a version of myself I have yet to really get together. We're all excited about forgiveness until we realize that it's going to require a level of humility. We're all excited about apologizing until we realize the apology may not be accepted. What do you do when you cannot control the process of birthing something? According to my earnest expectation and hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed. That means even if I am sitting in prison writing a letter to a church I was once able to touch with my own hands, I won't be ashamed. That means even if I don't have the finances to give today, or I'm not sure where the money is coming from, and I may have to, God forbid, pack my bags and move back home, I won't be ashamed because I have this earnest expectation and hope that he who controls my destiny is not out to shame me. And then we must come to a point where we are determined to not allow the opinions of others to be our expectation. I didn't come in here expecting to be loved or accepted. I just knew that God had called me to a man and must have prepared a place inside of church for me. And there were times and stares and people who may have challenged me to go back to Texas. But I had this earnest expectation and hope that if God brought me to this city, that if God brought me to the 405, that he was going to clear a path. Come on and bless him. But with all boldness as always, so now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or death. Whether by life or death. That means whether this gives me abundant life or makes me feel like I'm not going to be able to survive, Christ is still going to be magnified. Whether it goes exactly as I have planned, or for some reason I lose every person I thought was a friend, Christ will be magnified. I want to know, have you sized up the cost of destiny? I want to know, are you willing to sacrifice your list of things that have to go a certain way in exchange for God's must? Destiny demands vulnerability. It has to get inside of you. And not inside of the pretty, perfect picture version that you allow us to see. It has to get deep down inside underneath your pain. It has to dig deep down underneath your unforgiveness and the dreams that never happened. Destiny has to get right underneath all of that. Because it has to be the foundation and fuel that makes you keep going. If your destiny does not require you to cry at night, it might be a dream. If your destiny does not make you question yourself, your abilities, your talents, your gift, if it doesn't push you into making your good better, it can't be your destiny. The difference between destiny aborted and destiny miscarried is that in those two instances you lose the destiny, but in destiny delivered, it requires your life. In order for the destiny to live, you have to die to the destiny. You have to die to this idea that I'm going to make it to the other side and I'm still going to look like I had it all together the whole time. Perhaps the transition won't be as smooth as you anticipated. But the only thing that makes the destiny sustain itself is the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So then we have to ask, do you believe that your destiny is founded in the Spirit of Jesus Christ? Or is it something that you saw someone else live and thought that you should have too? Because the only reason that they were able to make it to a place where you were even able to see them is because some Spirit of Jesus Christ gave them the power necessary to keep going against all odds. The odds are against your destiny, but Christ is on your side. So if destiny comes down to whether or not it makes sense on paper, whether or not it'll have the approval of everyone you're connected to, and whether or not it will be easy and that there will be no obstacles or any mountains to climb, if that is what it's going to come down to, you might as well find somewhere real comfortable and refuse to grow right now. Because it's going to cost you to become someone you're not even sure you can become right now. It'll make you question whether or not you have really heard from God. Yeah, right there in the moment you hear him very loud and clear, but you better save it. You better favorite that tweet from the Lord. Because when destiny gets going, you're going to wonder, Lord, did you really, I'm not sure because I had your endorsement, I thought it would be easier than this. Because Paul had an encounter on the road to Damascus, he heard the Lord for himself very clearly. How did I end up in prison? I did exactly what you told me to do. I saved everyone you told me to save. I humbled myself. I did the forgiveness thing. I love you. I did it all. Yet I'm sitting here in chains, writing letters to a church that I saved, telling them that I hope in nothing I shall be ashamed. Sometimes you have to talk against your circumstances. You have to take a look at what's happening around you and say, I'm not going to let that get on the inside of me. Sure, it may look hopeless. Sure, it may look like there is no plan. But I remember the word that I heard from the Lord. And I'm willing to hang on to that word, even if it means hanging on to it in chains. Destiny miscarried. Someone saw the destiny that Paul was allowing other people to experience and tried to halt it. They thought to themselves, we will put him in prison and he will not touch another soul. And he grabbed a piece of paper and probably a feather and ink, because I'm not sure pens existed back then, and wrote letters. That's how desperate he was for destiny. That the chains couldn't hold him down. And the prison couldn't lock him in. I want to know how desperate you are for destiny. I want to know if you're willing to make it work by any means necessary. Because if you aren't, maybe you don't deserve it. If you can give up, if someone can talk you out of it, if I can convince you to give up on yourself, if I can convince you to quit, then maybe you don't deserve this destiny. They sang earlier, "You make me brave." It wasn't just because it sounded good. It's because you need a certain level of courage to be destined. And there's no way that you'll feel that courage on your own. And so you've got to tap into a resource that makes you feel brave enough to face what is up against you. The resources of heaven are willing to back you. But you cannot doubt yourself and the word from the Lord and pursue it at the same time. As I told you earlier, David Barker, the British physician, who says that the fetal origin, the first 9 months in a mother's womb, is the most critical to who an adult will become. It goes to show that your process of the development is just as significant as the destiny itself. Once you get the destiny out of you, once you come to a place where that destiny takes on a life of its own, you get to follow destiny. But until then, you are responsible for making sure what is inside of you comes outside. And how you process that, how you process the struggle, how you process the fears and the insecurities weighs just as much as the destiny itself. Don't be so consumed with getting it and reaching this level of achievement in which you think you will have smooth sailing that you miss the beauty of the struggle. That was my topic for today's message. The struggle is real. The struggle is real. And you cannot bypass the struggle. You have to face it head on with confidence that even in the darkest moments, things are going to work out for your good. So now also Christ will be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. What Paul is saying in that scripture is that if I live on, Christ is going to be glorified. And if I die, I'll be with Christ, so I'm going to be all right anyway. If you continue to live in a manner in which you know that everything you do is rooted in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, then there is no person on the other end of a decision that can dissuade you. Because Christ has called you to it. They are merely vessels working for your own good. There was a time in pregnancy in the 1950s where women were allowed to smoke and even drink during their pregnancy. They didn't even know that it could affect what was inside of them. That the baby could be affected by what they were ingesting and what they were taking inside of themselves. Yet as science evolved, they learned that it actually does have an effect. And as you evolve in your destiny, you too will learn that what you allow on the inside of you, that what you allow yourself to consume, whether you think it's connected to your destiny or not, it will affect your destiny. You are responsible for how your destiny is received, for how your destiny is cared for and developed. And at the end of the development process, you want to come to a point where you are proud of not just what happened, what the achievement was, but of who I was throughout the process. That means that there are going to be easy ways out. That there will be opportunities where you can look like you are bypassing struggle, but you have to lose a bit of character. Yeah, you may have to lower your standards and lower your morality, but at the end of the day, if you get the check, it'll be worth it. I wouldn't be too sure about that. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the end result. It's really about the journey. It's really about the process. And if at any point you received a word from God about your journey and about your destiny, from that moment that you receive the word, what you do with it from that point forward is all taken into account. So if I were you, I would avoid the spirit of procrastination that makes you feel like, yeah, I'll get to it when I finish doing what I was doing over here. Or I'll get to it when I get this together. Or I'll end that relationship when I feel like there's a perfect time and I won't hurt their feelings. And I'll quit the job once I save up to this point, even though I'm losing myself each time I clock in. Because you think that destiny can afford to wait, you're losing out on your ability to grow. So what does that mean? That means that when destiny is time to deliver, that you may have a few wounds. That you may end up with a few scars. That, like Paul, you may find yourself saying, to live is Christ and to die is gain. You may find yourself in a situation where you say, either way, I can't lose, even if it looks like I'm losing. But if I live on in the flesh, this will mean fruit from my labor. If I just continue to press on, there will be a fruit from this. If I just happen to survive the labor, the work, labor literally means work, necessary to bring this destiny to fruition, there is going to be a fruit that made it all worth it. Paul ends this scripture with saying, yet what I shall choose, I cannot tell. And as I prepare to close today, I want to know what you're going to choose. That just possibly it is decision-making time. And we all have a decision to make when it comes to destiny. And that question is, what will we choose? Will we be able to withstand the process of birthing pains and the process of labor? Perhaps even being ashamed. Perhaps having to start all over in the sake of destiny. Are we willing to do that, or is our facade, our reputation, the mask that we have created more important than the destiny that God has called us to? Would you stand with me as I prepare to close? We have an opportunity each and every day that we're faced with disappointment to not allow our miscarriages or attempts of aborting our destiny to change our expectation. There comes a point in our journey where our expectations can change. That instead of hope and a future, we begin to expect heartbreak and pain, and we don't even see the light at the end of the tunnel anymore. We just expect more disappointment. Because we've been let down so many times that it's not even safe for us to expect hope anymore, because last time we did that, we ended up broken. But what if I'm here to tell you, what if Paul's letters were written to remind you that you can expect hope in a prison? That you can expect hope in the middle of your despair. That destiny may cost you something. but it won't cost you everything. And that what you get in return for what you sacrifice is worth everything that you'll lose along the way. There is no person that you've lost on this journey that you need to continue on. There is no job that you lost out on that you needed for destiny to become yours. What if you're right where you're supposed to be? What if you're right where you belong? And you're so upset with what you think you've lost along the way that you can't even birth anything new. Until you stop birthing disappointment and birthing regret and resentment, you cannot birth hope. You still have time left. And we want to offer you, like Paul says in this scripture, he says, "For I know this will work out for my deliverance through your prayer and the Spirit of Jesus Christ." We want to offer you an opportunity to receive prayer. Paul couldn't do it on his own. He needed a body of believers who would touch and agree that though I may be in a prison right now, that there's going to be deliverance after this. And if you have found yourself confined and chained and discouraged, without expectations, we want to offer you an opportunity to meet us here in the front so that we can pray with you, that your hope will be renewed, that the Spirit of Christ would overflow inside of you, that you would no longer have to fear being ashamed, and that above all things, you need a reminder that you have what it takes to survive destiny. Every now and then we need a reminder that the struggle is real. That this wasn't supposed to be a cakewalk and that everything wasn't going to be easy. But that we have what it takes to overcome our challenges. Every now and then we need a reminder that this struggle wasn't meant to break us or convince us to give up. That we don't have to be worried about being ashamed or afraid, because we're expecting glory on the other side of this. That even when our circumstance doesn't dictate it, that we are expecting that this is going to work together for our good. And we don't have to understand it to expect hope. It doesn't have to make sense to us, only to God. And so here at this altar, we're going to lay those burdens to God. And we're going to ask him in exchange if you would give us a supply of your spirit, a supply of your strength, a supply of your hope, so that no matter what I end up facing on this journey, I'll withstand it all. We've all had these moments, these crossroads on the road to destiny, in which we weren't exactly sure if Christ was going to free us from prison or if he was going to keep us chained there so that we could write a letter to a church. But I'm telling you that if you have found yourself chained right now, perhaps imprisoned in your own mind, it's not to make you ashamed. It's not to convince you to give up. That God has you in that season for a reason, so that when you make it to the other side of it, you'll remember that you almost didn't make it. And so Christ will have to be magnified in your life, because it was not by your own might or your own will, but by his glory alone.